Welcome to the lecture series on electronic devices. In this lecture, we will be revising few concepts from module 1. We started with the electron shells and we noted down few of the definitions like atomic number, which is nothing but number of electrons or the number of protons in the atom, and the shells, they are numbered 1, 2, 3, right, from starting to the nucleus. And we have also seen that how many electrons are possible, maximum number of electrons are possible. Then the nucleus is positive. Why? Because there are protons, and neutrons, they are neutral. Hence the totally nucleus is positive, and all the electrons which are negatively charged, they are being attracted towards the nucleus. Then the electrons, they are which are in the outermost occupied shell, they determine the chemical properties of the atom, and they are also called as valence electrons, and the shell is called as valence shell. These things we have seen. So this was just the atomic structure, Bohr's atomic model of different atoms, right? And we started with the bonding, right? We started with initially the ionic bonding, where complete transfer of valence electrons happens between the atoms. So the Na, it will give one electron, and chlorine, it will take one electron to become stable. So the Na, it will be positively charged after giving the electron, and chlorine, after receiving the electron, it will be negatively charged. The attraction between oppositely charged ions, Na and Cl, right, after the transfer of electrons, that attraction or attractive force is called as ionic bonding. After that, we went towards the metallic bonding, wherein we take the example of Na crystal, that is sodium crystal, and the free electrons, they are being bound by the sodium crystal. Right? So that attractive force between positively charged ion, specifically sodium ion in sodium crystal, and the electrons, right? That attractive force between positive charged ions and electrons is called as metallic bonding. Finally, we went towards covalent bonding, where there is sharing of electrons, right? And it is called as molecular bond. And we just came to know that the covalent bonding is the weakest type of bonding. Then we also saw a mixed type of bonding, wherein we can have ionic bonding and covalent bonding in some materials like gallium arsenide and so on. After that, we went towards. Let me open the. After that, we went towards the energy bands. What are you people able to see now? Just a second. Share it. Are you able to see the energy diagram, energy band diagram?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
Sir.
So in the energy bands, we have seen we have put a graph wherein the y-axis it was showing the energy of the electrons, and the x-axis it was showing the interatomic distance. So here, what concept we have learnt is, as the interatomic distance varies or changes, that means the distance between the two atoms as it changes, that distance between the two atoms, it will affect the energy of the electrons. So we know there are different shells, right? So the first shell, it is called as inner shell. There will be two electrons. We have taken the example of silicon, and in the middle shells again there will be 2s2 and 2p6, right? And then in the outermost shell also we will be having two electrons. So what we were concluding from this was, out of totally 6 vacancies, there are 2 electrons in the outermost shell. And what happens when the interatomic distance changes, right? So here the left side, you can think that this is the origin, right? This part is the origin, and as the distance between the two atoms it decreases, the energy of the electron it will split as shown here. And again, why the energy of the outermost electron it is being changed here, and why the energy of the innermost electrons it is not affected, is because the outermost electrons, or the electrons present in the outer shell, what they will be more influenced by the other atoms, because the inner atoms they are being attracted, having high attractive force from the nucleus, but these are not having that affinity towards the nucleus, right? So the outermost shells or outermost electrons, they will be splitting their energies in two parts, right? And this indicates that it is moving towards it is becoming free. This graph, it is moving upward, and that indicates that it is trying to become free. And here uh, we have the split in this part also. So what we can conclude from this is, actually this is the band diagram. The upper band it becomes the conduction band, and the lower band it becomes the valence band, right? So so the formation of bands, that is the conduction band and the valence band, is basically happening from this phenomenon. And we have the restrictions in the interatomic spacing also, like any two atoms they cannot come as close as they want, so there is always a restriction between them. But here what case is taken is, if the interatomic space it becomes very small, then even the electrons which are present in the middle shell, they will be splitting in their energies, which is shown at this point, right? And if again, if the interatomic space if it again decreases, even there will be some split in the first energy shell also, for inner shell electrons also. But that is not possible, because the interatomic space it is having its own limit, right? So this was the concept here. What we are seeing here, we are seeing the effect of interatomic space, or the distance between the two atoms, how the distance changes, the energy of the outermost electrons they changes, and that change in energy it is called as it forms the two bands, the conduction band and the valence band, and the difference between the two bands, it is called as energy gap. So after this, we just went through the direct and indirect band gap semiconductors, wherein we have seen, okay, before that we have seen insulators, semiconductors and metals. So in metals, those two energies, they just overlap. The energies of the electron in the conduction band and the valence band, they just overlap. So there is no any energy band gap. Hence, it will be always conducting, or they are called as conductors. Coming to the case of semiconductors, there will be huge band gap, as you are seeing here. And the electrons, they cannot get sufficient energy to jump from the valence band to the conduction band. Hence, the insulators, they will not be conducting because there will not be any motion of electrons in them. And coming to the semiconductors, semiconductor is in between the insulator and the conductors. So it is having some finite energy band gap between the valence band and the conduction band, wherein if few electrons they get some sufficient energy, they can just jump to the conduction band and they start conducting. That is, they can initiate the current in the semiconductors, right? And even semiconductors, they just act like insulators at lower temperature, and they act like conductors at a higher temperature. Hence, the name is semiconductor. After that, we went through the two types of again semiconductor materials. One is called direct band gap semiconductor material, and the other is called as indirect band gap semiconductor material. In direct band gap semiconductor material, we have seen that whenever any electron, okay, before that, what this graph is indicating, this graph is indicating this is the minimum energy level. Are you able to see the cursor?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes,
This point is the minimum energy level of the electron in this whole conduction band, right? So this is the minimum energy level of electron in the conduction band. And what is this? This is the maximum energy level of the electron in valence band. So this is valence band and this is conduction band, right? So whenever any electron, if it is trying to come down from conduction band to the valence band, at that time it liberates some energy. Why? Because initially the electron which was present in the valence band, it had grasped some energy, and then due to that energy it had shifted itself in the conduction band. But now if it is coming back to its own original position, then it has to liberate some energy, right? Because there is energy gap here. So whatever is the energy gap, that amount of energy will be liberated in the form of light. Why it is liberated in the form of light? Because the uh, the electron, it directly travels from valence band to the conduction. From conduction band to the valence band directly without any sideways momentum. Hence, and even these kind of materials, they are basically in that nature, like whenever there is energy loss from the electron, that energy will come in the form of light, right? This concept even we have seen it in the LEDs also, that direct band gap semiconductors are used to manufacture the LEDs. And what happens in the indirect band gap semiconductor is, whenever the electron having minimum energy in the conduction band, whenever it wants to just jump towards the valence band, it has some sideways movement, right? This is momentum, a constant for momentum versus the energy. So this momentum, it will liberate some heat, right? Whenever the energy is lost, it comes out in the form of heat. So these types of materials, they are called as indirect band gap semiconductor material. Example of direct band gap semiconductor materials are gallium arsenide, gallium nitride, etc., which are used in manufacturing LEDs. And example for indirect band gap semiconductor materials, they are nothing but you can say they are germanium, silicon, etc. Right? Whatever we use it in our daily life. So their heat will be liberated. So next we saw the formation of holes, how the holes are generated, right? So as I said, whenever the electrons which are present in the valence band, they just jump into the conduction band, they gain some energy, and whenever okay, when the electron has moved from valence band to the conduction band, there is some vacancy created in the valence band. That vacancy itself is called as hole. And whenever this electron, if it tries to lose some energy and if it jumps back to the valence band, it will be combining with that vacancy called as hole, and the process is called as recombination. Okay, so the process is called as recombination. And the previous process where the electron jumped from valence band to the conduction band, so that process is called as electron hole pair generation. Why? Because the hole is generated there, and electron, it is free to move, right? And electron jumping back from conduction band to the valence band and combining with the hole or recombining with the hole, it is called as recombination. So in this way, the holes are generated, and the electrons, they will be free to move in the conduction band, which forms the current, which is the basic reason for the current. So this we had seen. Here also we have one problem, but I guess it may not be asked. Why? Because the question itself is consuming some 10 to 15 lines. And coming to the effective mass, it is not there. Coming to the intrinsic and extrinsic, we know pure semiconductor is called as intrinsic semiconductors, when there is no any impurity present in it, but we just convert intrinsic into extrinsic by adding some impurities. That process, it is called as doping, and the impurities, they are called as dopants. And there are two types of impurities, p type and the n type, or we can say pentavalent and trivalent. Pentavalent, if it is added, the material will become n type semiconductor, extrinsic semiconductor material. And if the trivalent is added, it will become p type extrinsic semiconductor material from intrinsic. So this is just a diagram which is showing what happens if what is added here, silicon. Okay, that was pure silicon. This is pure silicon. Nothing is added here. Right? Whenever we come to the extrinsic, something will be, some impurities will be added. Say for example, arsenic is added on the right hand side, and boron is added on the left hand side. So this side it becomes p type material, and this side it will become n type material. And arsenic, it is pentavalent, hence it has donated one electron. It is called as donor atom, or we can say it becomes an ion. So it becomes donor ion, and the boron, it tries to take one electron, hence it becomes negatively charged ion. So this is just a quick revision for you all. And next we had temperature dependence on carrier concentration. Just try to see if I have some material. So dependence. The carrier concentration. uh, so we had started with the conductivity and mobility directly. Okay. So we had started with the scattering, and I had said two types of scatterings are there, right? So the one, it is directionless scattering. So we are moving towards the mobility and conductivity. And directionless scattering, random scattering, it will result in no current. Why? Because the average velocity it becomes zero. Why? Because the electrons or the carriers it just travels in random direction. One direction may cancel out the other direction. In a directed motion of carriers, we may think that there is some direction given to the carriers so that we get some average velocity, and that average velocity will lead to the current in the device. So this is the just diagram representing the both the types of scattering. And mobility, we had seen that it describes the ease with which electrons can drift in the material. Like how easily the electrons can drift in the material, that is nothing but mobility. And it is very important because it characterizes the semiconductor materials in developing the devices. And the unit of mobility we had seen, right? And also we had seen the derivation of mobility, where we finally we get that velocity, it is nothing but q into t into the electric field whole divided by the mobility. So we can take out the equation for mobility, m equals to, right? Later we went towards the drift current and diffusion current. So I had just given you a good example where in drift current it will be having some external force. The carriers will be drifting due to that applied electric field. And diffusion current doesn't require any uh, external electric field. The diffusion is nothing but movement of carriers from high concentration gradient to the low concentration gradient. But drift current, it is forced movement. right? It is having some external force. So we had seen even the properties of resistance. R is nothing but V by I, and simply if we substitute these formulas, we'll be getting the formula as R equals to length divided by sigma into A, where we can conclude that resistance, it is directly proportional to the length of the material and it is inversely proportional to the area of the material. Next, we had a current in the semiconductor and the current density, which is given by conductivity into the electric field, right? So this was calculated as per the Ohm's law. And we had the derivation of conductivity also, wherein it is given by Q into mu n into n plus mu p into p. So this formula even we have used today for solving the problem. So we had basically two types of scattering. The first scattering was lattice scattering, wherein the carriers, they just simply collide with the surfaces in a lattice, right? And that type of scattering, it is called as lattice scattering. And we had one more scattering, it is called as impurity scattering, which happens in the extrinsic semiconductor material. I had given you an example like electron, it is moving from left hand side towards the right hand side. Ideally it should move straight, but due to arsenic ion, this negatively charged electron will be attracted towards this, and its momentum just deviates from its original position. So this deviation is called as scattering, and it is happening due to impurity, hence it is called as impurity scattering, right? And we had few phenomena like lower temperature, what will happen? So there will be less thermal vibration, electrons will move slower, and finally the mobility will be lower at the lower temperature, right? And the opposite happens in the other way. How mobility affects the it is affected by the temperature, right? So I had said you that the mobility of the electrons, it will be, or the carriers, it will be maximum at optimum temperature. If the temperature is less, the mobility will be less due to impurity scattering, and if the temperature is more, the mobility will be less again due to lattice scattering. Why? Because lattice scattering, what happens in lattice scattering is, as the temperature increases, the mobility of this will go on decreasing. Why? Because more number of electrons will be getting energy and they will be colliding amongst themselves. So finally, it will be reducing the mobility. Here, this graph is telling at lower temperature, mobility is low due to impurity scattering, and even at high temperatures, the mobility is low due to lattice scattering. The optimum mobility, maximum mobility will get at the optimum or normal temperature. Then we had seen the effect of doping concentration on the mobility. As the doping concentration increases, the mobility will decrease. Why? Because again the same concept. The concentration has increased means what? There are so many people in the market. They'll be colliding with themselves. Hence, the overall mobility, it will decrease. So these were some examples for different materials. Then directly we had gone to the Hall effect. I had explained what is Hall effect. The Hall effect is nothing but voltage generation perpendicular to the current and the magnetic field when any semiconductor material is placed in the presence of magnetic field which is carrying the current, right? Say for example, this is the material, current is moving in the x direction, the magnetic field is present in the z direction, and the electric field, it will be produced in the y direction, right? And that itself is the Hall effect. And we had few equations relating to Hall effect, but we are not starting any equation from the basics. So I had recommended you to just try to remember the equations, right? So we have something called as Hall coefficient, which is given by RH, yes, and that derivation we had explained you in the previous classes. So basically, Hall effect, it is used to differentiate between N and P type material whenever we don't know that which type of material it is. So quickly, I have just covered module 1 today. Again, I'm seeing that so what we'll do, we will cover the module 2 tomorrow.
Okay, sir.